Hello and welcome to the Life After Diets podcast. I'm Sarah Dosanjh, psychotherapist and author of the book, I Can't Stop Eating.
And I'm Stefanie Michele, binge recovery health coach. If you feel out of control around food, we get it because we've been there.
Thank you for joining our conversations about how to make peace with food and feel more comfortable in our bodies.
Now on to this week's episode. Hey, Sarah.
Hi, Steph.
I like your new fuzzy microphone.
It's lovely, isn't it? I've got a nice fluffy new cover for my mic and I just want to rest my face on it.
It's really fancy.
If anyone wants to see it, they can come and check out our YouTube channel and they'll see my new microphone.
It's always really inviting when we start a podcast talking about the visuals.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
No.
It's a little bit topsy-turvy today because we've already recorded the episode and we're doing the intro afterwards. Steph and I don't always find the intros the easiest part of recording the podcast. So we were like, let's try it the other way around. Plus, we can tell you what to expect and whet your appetites.
Whet your appetites. Today, we're each sharing our top 5 lessons that we've learned in recovery. I don't like the word lessons too much. Well, our takeaways or what
realizations.
Yeah.
I think I might have just said things we learned, which is a lesson. It's got the word learn in it.
Things we've taken from recovery.
Yeah.
So we both share. We wrote out our lists separately and we share them with each other.
Yes. So in this episode, you're about to hear both of our lists and you get to find out if we had any of the same realizations in our recovery.
So we hope you like it. We hope you stay tuned.
Stay tuned. For goodness sake, just stay tuned. Okay, so this is going to be interesting, Steph. I wonder how many of these are going to be the same. I'm looking at mine. Yeah, I'm looking at mine and thinking, I actually don't think that many of them will be the same because my brain seemed to go in other places with this. Not very thought. But yeah.
Well, I started I was like, I'm going to come up with 3 instead of 5. And then I was like coming on 10. I really need to condense my list, but let's just go. Let's go.
Okay. All right. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
You can go.
Okay. So the first one I'm going to go with because it's quite basic and I've spoken about it before. The others are a little bit more existential. And that was when I realized and really understood the role of restrictive thinking and saw for myself how that was playing out in my life, that was a game changer. Because I've said before, like the restriction thing, it just felt like it was not me. It didn't apply to me. But when I saw how every night I was saying to myself, tomorrow, I'm only going to eat these foods, and it was a restrictive amount. I was doing that every day. So I was basically doing Last Supper eating every day. And once I stopped trying to consciously with my head eat in some kind of deficit, there was a significant shift in the intensity of my binging. That wasn't it on its own, but that was a really key boom moment for me. Did you have anything similar to that? Or
that, like, if I had to pick one thing only, that would be it. I wrote it as my number 1, but I put it a little bit differently. I put my body is predictable, reasonable, working as an extension of that, because I believed that there was just something wrong with my body, that it needed to binge. I was broken. It was broken. I had hormone problems. I was always confused about why I was binging. And once I really, really understood the role of restriction and then stopped doing that, and I'm simplifying it there, but stopped, my body was like, thanks. And the binge urges, again, not the whole story, but a huge driver. And when I shifted that, all of a sudden my body was much more predictable. I call it reasonable because I was always like, my body's so unfair. But I was like, no, my body's being completely reasonable. Like under this lens, it made a lot of sense. And it's working. I mean, that to me was, again, would be my number 1 thing that I have taken from this. And it still guides my relationship with food today.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's the one that I thought we were both going to have something similar.
Oh,
do you want to tell me? Yeah. Do you want to tell me your number 2 and see if it's close to any of mine?
Sure. So this one borders a bit on more of the body image piece as well. So mine is that authenticity feels better than power and prestige and like the hierarchy. So I think the pursuit for me of a body or of a way of eating that would give me this status, that's what I felt I needed. I thought that I needed more power somehow, or some kind of leverage to feel good. And in fact, what feels the best to me and what feels good and what just feels honest to me is like just eating what I need, however much that is, and what my body ends up doing. I mean, I couldn't live the other way.
Mhm.
So the value shift of authenticity over power or hierarchy
Do
status.
you know how that shifted for you? As in, at what point, what triggered off this realization that something needed to shift in this part?
Because if you're because I wasn't living authentically, and after a while, I think that it wasn't necessarily that that word was in my mind, but it was like I need to live honestly. I need to live. I need my food to be real. Like I remember saying that, and I have journal entries where I'm like, I need my food to be. I think another word I used to use a lot was sustainable. It needs to be It can't be contrived anymore. I cannot live this way. It was exhaustion. So it was kind of I just need to be me. It was a feeling more than it was a thought.
Mm.
And it was just, I think, just sheer exhaustion from living so long not that way in the pursuit of something inauthentic.
Yeah. I've got one. My number 5 feels a little similar to that, but a bit different as well. And I just wrote 2 words, and it was, "I'm okay."
Mm,
And it was this realization that I wasn't gonna arrive somewhere where I suddenly felt different about myself. There was this idealized image of when I fixed my food and I fixed my body and I fixed all my deficits and all the areas that I was falling short. When I finally managed to get on top of all of that,
mm,
that's when I would be okay. And
mhm.
it was realizing that I'm already okay. Actually, this idealized version of me probably doesn't exist. There's still part of my brain that goes like, maybe one day you will arrive there. But I'm on the 95% sure that that version of me was not realistic, and it was too painful to pursue, because actually in trying to pursue that idealized version meant I just felt like I was failing at it every single day.
Yeah, that is in line. I think there's something of in both of these that's this. Here I am, here I am, and it's okay.
Yeah.
But to flip the question, because that's something, right? I'm sure we've all heard. I mean, I think that the concept of me being okay as I am, or me being, it was presented to me before and to the listeners. What makes how does that message become embodied? How did it for you? Or trustworthy?
I think to begin with, I realized that it was just hurting so much to try. I don't think it was even a sense of realizing, oh, I'm not living in alignment with my values and I want to live in alignment with my values. No, I was just in so much pain trying to pursue it.
Mhm.
So I think there was this kind of collapse
Mm,
and grief and letting go of something. So I think there was quite a long time of letting go, but still not necessarily feeling okay. And so I was very low during that time because I can't be this thing. It's hurting more to try. It does hurt less not to try, but now I just feel sad
mm,
about that. And I think in terms of how or when that actually shifted, I think it's really hard to say because I actually think it's not this linear thing. I think it's something that I move in and out of even now.
mm,
So today, you and I having this conversation, I feel really grounded, really, really okay in myself. And I did this morning when I wasn't doing anything. I felt really okay in myself. But part of me knows there's going to be days when I don't. And at the moment, I can say I'm okay with that. That is going to happen. Because even with this sense of self acceptance, it can feel like that is a place that you arrive at. And now I've accepted myself and I'm there. And okay, I've accepted this version of me, but I've managed to achieve that self acceptance thing everyone's going
yeah.
on about. So I think I just started to experience it more often as opposed to arriving somewhere where
Mm,
that was now me.
yeah. I agree.
Mm.
I feel calm listening to you, Sarah, now. I just forgot to look at my notes. Ah,
I can
right.
do one that I don't think you'll have.
Okay.
It'd be interesting to see if there's anything that even mirrors it in any way. And so, because I've spoken about having this pituitary tumor, which knocked my hormones out, and all that was going on at the same time as my binge eating started, and my binge eating started a bit later on. I was nearly 20, I was 25 when it started. For the longest time, I thought that I would never be able to figure this food thing out until I knew where the line was between what was biologically triggered and what was emotionally and
Mm.
psychologically triggered. That was a question I spent hours in therapy going round and round with, banging my head against the wall.
Yeah.
There's no one out there with an answer to say how much of my eating was physical, how much was emotional or anything else, and or dieting as well, how much of it was restriction. It's really hard to tell. And I didn't think that I could cope actually without figuring that out. And so one of the lessons coming to was accepting that I couldn't figure out, and that even now, on what feels like the other side of it, I don't know, and I
Yeah.
can't know how, if, what the influence. I think because at the time I really wanted to know because there was this real dilemma or conflict between if this is physical, oh, well, that means it's not my fault. I can be less ashamed of that.
Yeah.
It's physical because it's not my fault. But if it's physical, there's not much you can do about it because there isn't the right medication or can't change your body to fix that either.
Yeah.
So there was a sort of element of despair. I think part of me still held on to the idea that it was 99% physical for the longest time because that was how I kept myself out of shame. To
Yeah.
sort of admit to myself that I could be, quote unquote, the type of person to develop an eating disorder, let alone binge eating disorder, which is the one that often carries, even higher levels of shame, which may not necessarily be true. That's how it felt for me anyway.
Yeah.
That was a lesson for me that I was stuck. I couldn't move on until I just let that beast go and somehow just had to tolerate the dissonance of not knowing.
Mm. Why did you know that wouldn't be on my list? Is it just because I've never had a pituitary
I
tumor?
think so, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I think so.
I thought it might be because I love to know why.
Yeah.
I think of your concept of states a lot. And there's times where the why is so compelling and that feels very needed. And then other times where you sort of like float above that and it's I don't want to say above. You float away from that
Mhm,
and it doesn't matter. It doesn't
mhm.
matter why.
Yeah, and it
That's a
does
word.
feel like above to me. It feels like as you talk about zooming
Yeah.
out, it's that kind of thing,
Yeah.
no? Yeah.
Yeah. I just got self-critical of the word. I didn't want it to imply that it was this like lofty place to
Oh,
be.
superior. Gotcha.
Superior. Yeah, but okay. I don't know. The rest, the ones that I have here, I think you might well have. But which one do I want to put next? Um, okay. I have choices about how I feel about myself, and I can create my own thoughts. So that's been powerful because before I just kind of went along with my thoughts. I just really they were. I thought that everything I thought was fact. Like it was that's just how it was. And coming into slowly, again, this wasn't a singular moment. It was over time, realizing how much influence I actually had over how I felt based on what I chose to think about or how I chose to think about something. That I had the freedom to do that. Like recognizing that there was a landscape of thought available that I could move into was game changing. I listened to do you ever listen to Cara Lowenthal?
I know who she is, but I haven't listened to her podcast, no.
She was the first person that introduced me to the concept, and I took that and ran with it, and I started to practice that, and that's still again a running theme.
Yeah. I'm thinking, damn it, that should be on my list. It really should. And it's interesting because she's one of Brooke Castillo's coaches, I believe.
Yes.
And Brooke Castillo was my first introduction to thought work and don't believe everything you think. And it was through Brooke Castillo's podcast in the early days. She used to share one of her teachers and she shared Byron Katie one week. And that was when I looked up Byron Katie stuff. And she's probably had the most influence on me in terms of thought work. I mean, I've got one. It's not that, but I think it's not that. I'm trying to make a bit of a tenuous link, so I'm just
Okay.
gonna let's see if it even goes close to that. It was this idea I was for so long really focused on what I ate, my behavior around food. So I kept just trying to change my behavior. And it was realizing that if I took care of my emotional state around food, my behavior around food was balanced enough. It was never going to be perfect. I think I thought if I just felt great all the time, then like my eating would just magically be exactly how in my thinking brain I thought it should be. But I found that if I took the focus off what the actual outcome was and focused on how I felt, because although I'm quite analytical in quite a few ways, when it comes to how I process things and how I make contact with things, I feel first.
Yeah.
So quite often I feel and I don't know what I'm thinking and I don't know what I'm believing. The thought work stuff was really helpful because it pinpointed the beliefs and then I could see how my beliefs affected my emotions. It wasn't even my thoughts that affected my emotions. And that separation of a thought and a belief was really
Mm.
useful to me as well. The belief there was a sense of some ownership and choice. And for me, that choice came through questioning my beliefs, which was the Byron Katie thing as well. So rather than it's like the intention that I've shared before after when I was trying to reset after I'd had a binge is setting an intention of, okay, I can eat whatever I want tomorrow. I just have to try and be present and really enjoy it. That focusing on, I can have this. Am I going to enjoy it? Using my emotions as that kind of, um, I don't want to say, it's not quite a boundary, but like a gentle boundary as a way to try and make decisions was helpful. Until it wasn't, because if I went through like a chaotic emotional time, my emotions were much more up and down. Maybe for other reasons, it was much harder to maintain that stability with food. But coming back to that over and over again and deciding that actually how I felt about myself and my eating, I wanted to make that the most important thing beyond the external, like whether my body changed or how I looked. And I recognized that by the fact that how I felt about my body would change from day to day. It was never this completely static thing. I think it implanted this idea that I could focus more on managing the emotions. So rather, how do I not binge tomorrow? How do I feel calmer around food tomorrow? When I reframed it into how I wanted to feel as opposed to what I thought I should do,
Mm.
that I think is what I'm trying to get at, if that makes sense.
How did you write that down in your note there? Like, how did you
Oh,
summarize that?
I wrote it down as take care of my emotional state and in capital letters first.
Okay. When you talk about that, because I was thinking, now of course I'm thinking of all the things I forgot to put on my list. I'm like, there's something about that, which we talked about in the live episode for our members this week, where we were talking about it in terms of how do you know you're satisfied. But there's something about that out breath or the involuntary side that tells you your body is feeling okay and calm and regulated. And my favorite word, safe. Um, and that feeling around food as opposed to the vigilance, the shoulds, like the mind, right? And rather the body's sense of safety and that ability to switch states, which does remind me of that choice of thoughts, right? Which I'm careful to acknowledge that sometimes, I guess if I'd been listening to this before, it's not a toxic positivity idea of like, you just believe that you're the best and you got this, girl, and that's it, like it's more subtle. It's like with the all or nothing thinking in this black and white state of being, it's just like this little shift this way. It's just excuse me. It's not that you have to believe something that's completely unbelievable to your brain. It's just opening the lens a little wider to make room for something that is actually not that far away, but it's a completely different, angle on it.
Mhm. And I think for me, it was normally remembering a belief because how
Yeah.
changeable my beliefs could be. Like what I'd
Mm.
be believing in the morning when I'm full of beans and today's going to be a great day
Yeah.
compared to what I was believing in the evening when everything seemed to fall apart and trying to bring those closer together, recognizing the fluctuations between the two. And because Byron Katie often talks about like, I don't let go of my beliefs let go of me.
Mm.
And so by doing the work with Byron Katie and you question the beliefs and you keep seeing how the opposite and the turnarounds are also true, it just stops those beliefs from being as fixed and deep
Yeah.
rooted. So they can come And now if I'm in a difficult place and I've got some, difficult beliefs or thoughts going on in my mind, what I can do a lot of the time is go, oh, like I'm believing this. It might not be true.
Yeah.
So I don't try and convince myself it's not true when my feelings are telling me it is, but I can hold a little bit of doubt. And that means I just hold enough perspective to feel like I'm not
Yes.
drowning in the feeling.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which that tiny little thing is so powerful. That's the point, I think.
Yeah. If you want connection and support around any of the topics we talk about on the podcast, we would love for you to join our membership community.
Members have access to monthly online support groups, a private Facebook group, live episode recordings, and member-only Q&As.
If you would like to join us, please head to lifeafterdietspodcast.com/community.
Now let's get back to the episode.
Do we both have one left? Is that right? Have you got
I have
two
like
left?
10 left. No, I'm going to pick my favorite. You can go first with yours.
Yes. So this one, because the last one I was going to say was the I'm okay one. That was what I was going to end with, but I
We're going to end
had
with a
to bring
bang.
that forward. So this one I think was, I don't know if this was where the seed first planted, but it certainly was watered. About 9 months into starting binge eating, as if it was something I just started. 9 months after binging began, I went and saw a private CBT therapist. And again, I've shared this story before on the podcast and in a few places. Around about weeks 6 or 7, I've been doing all the homework I was told. I did everything that she was telling me to do because I trusted this woman was going to lead me out of the binging. And I was still struggling like 6 or 7 weeks. Nothing had changed. My binges were maybe even worse than ever. My weight had gone up in that time as well. So I was particularly like in stress and distress. And when I left the session that week, as I left, she said to me, Sarah, I really want you to try this week. And the shame that came down, that blanket of shame that just sort of fell on me because I believed it. I thought, I can't be trying hard enough. And for years, I thought the reason why I hadn't recovered from this was because I clearly wasn't trying hard enough. Because you know what it's like? You have times where you're defeated and you spiral. And then afterwards, I would be judging myself. I should have got up. Why was I collapsing in self-pity and just letting myself? It felt like afterwards I would think, oh, I've just let myself binge again. I felt like I just kept letting myself binge because I kept forgetting what it felt like in that moment where no other option even seemed possible. And something that I'd been thinking about recently, just because a few things that people had said, that idea that, okay, somebody might be sitting in their lounge and they're thinking of the food in the other room. And they have that first pull of the urge or whatever it might be. And the amount of times that someone will have battled with that until they get worn out and they go and have the food. And on another day, the urge comes and they don't even try and battle it. There's no resistance. They're just like, it's here and I'm going to have it. And then beating themselves up afterwards that they didn't even try and do something different. They didn't even try and resist the urge. That was how I felt as well. And the more I've been thinking about it, I've been thinking, when you get in that conflict, it's this idea of conflict that's been kind of going around in my mind a lot. When you get in that conflict back and forth, should I, shouldn't I, shouldn't I? It feels like the conflict can't end until you do, because once you do, it's not an option. Whereas if you keep saying no, the option to do it is still there, back and forth, back and forth. And I think sometimes like that urge would come and it's like your brain knows where it's going to end up.
Yes, exactly.
And it's almost trying to just save you having to go through the stress of the conflicts. Like you're going to end up there anyway. Don't even think about it. Switch off into compulsion, go and have it. And I now view it very differently as this sort of almost like a conservation of energy so as not to get in a fight. But I
Yes.
certainly felt like this. So I'm just in case anybody else listening to this feels like it, if you feel like you're not fighting hard enough with it, I hear you. And I don't think that's the case. So
Yeah.
the realization, the lesson was realizing it was not because I wasn't trying hard enough.
Yeah. Oh, that's your summary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I needed that. What I really needed to do, and I know you're not a big fan of this word, but for me, it was this idea of surrender. The more
I
had
word.
to stop. I thought you didn't like it. I had to stop getting in a fight with it. That the goal wasn't about fighting, and it wasn't about trying really hard. And people think, wow, well, what is it about? And I think it does take willingness. more than fighting. Willingness to feel some stuff, to go some places that we don't want to go. It's work recovery, but it's not a, I don't know if the fight is a helpful word. Not for me anyway. People
Mm.
like it, then by all means use it.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't feel so much as a fight. I
Mhm.
felt like it was when the fighting stopped
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
Is that your last one?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then I'll give you mine.
You try and
All right.
decide which one.
No, I think I know. Um, it's my needs are not always mainstream, and that's okay.
Mm.
So it wasn't just my needs, actually. Amend it to lots of things. So my appetite, my body size. Although admittedly I am in a straight size body, but this idea that like I was supposed to be eating what I was supposed to be. I was supposed to be someone who ate less than I need, for sure. Like eat like a bird. That my body was supposed to be a size whatever and look like this and not have cellulite and da da da. Like I need to look this way. That I'm supposed to be an extrovert. That I'm supposed to be the kind of mom that all these stories about what I'm supposed to be. Most of them, I shouldn't say that. A lot of them are not mainstream. So I had a lot of shame around a lot of things, not the least of which was food in my body, but also, this extended to other things like my need to have more alone time. As a mom, this is like selfish, right? Like there were a lot of things that I needed to surrender to, and make some kind of like, all right, like this is actually how I run. And all I'm doing is running up against myself constantly. I guess it speaks more to the authenticity thing. Um, when I started to, and still now, when I notice that I get into comparison or I shouldn't be doing something that I am inclined to do, or eat or whatever, it's okay that I'm not that person. It's okay that I don't look like this. It's okay that I'm not my former self. It's okay that I need to go lay down in bed right now. This kind of self acceptance piece started with food and body and extended to so many other things and continues to be something to remind myself of a lot. And that it hasn't, my world hasn't crashed. So continuing to observe how I can exist in the ways that I am and the world doesn't fall apart around me. Like I can function this way. It's not necessarily the mainstream way, or it's not necessarily something that I was taught, that my parents wanted me to be, or that society wants me to be, but it's me. So,
Mhm.
um, and it's not going to look like a lot of the ways other people do things.
Yeah.
So that's okay.
So that's you're okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't tie it
And
in.
I'm okay. You're okay and we're okay, Steph.
We are. It is that one. Look at that.
Look at that. Yeah.
Well, thanks. This was a good idea for an
Yeah.
episode, Sarah.
I enjoyed it anyway, and hopefully it might give the listeners something to think about, and always interested in hearing everybody else's lessons that they're learning as well. Do
Yeah.
you think these are lessons that you had to learn in order to recover? Or do
No.
you think
Sorry, I answered you too
no,
quick.
answer it. Yeah.
No, I could never have. Well, I guess I should say I could never have told you these things inside of it. It's only in retrospect that I'm able to see it that way. They evolved over that time.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, I had nothing. I had none of this together when I
Yeah.
began that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's an important point to say to people. Less there's a fear that, oh, I have to. I'm conscious as well, like a lot of the language that we've used is very, I don't know what the word is. Um, I might have to cut that sentence because I don't know what the word is.
What does it mean?
Well, not fancy, but like
Like therapy
big,
language?
big, and
Oh,
oh yeah, maybe therapy language. Yeah, I know it's a lot of it is like maybe like therapy language. Sorry, just because you volunteered the word for me, and then like I just took it, and I was like, I'll just cut you out. You telling me to use the word therapy language, we'll cut that bit out, and I'll use the word therapy language
it's
and
like
make it sound like it was me.
like therapy language.
Yeah.
No, take it, Sarah.
Yeah, I think what I mean is when I was in it and in the chaos, I think if I listened to people speaking the way that you and I are speaking, there might have been an inner eye roll.
Totally. That's why I said the toxic positivity thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to say, if anyone's feeling that, like, it's okay. I get it.
Yeah.
We get
Yeah.
it.
It's really hard to do this because I always like, I'm gonna be the most real, and then it's like, these cliches are true.
Damn it.
How do I present this?
Right. But yeah, anyway, I hope it was interesting for people. And if it was, if you could rate the show and tell the world how interesting our show is, that would be great. And if you could tell a friend,
Yeah.
find somebody
Share.
that you like and tell them about our podcast.
Or somebody that you don't like.
No. We only serve the people that we like.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
All right. We'll see you next week, everyone. And
Yeah.
Sarah.
See you, Steph.
Bye.